I started noticing this pattern that I would get this feeling that I've been here before. I've learnt this lesson, I thought, before, but clearly I haven't because I'm having to learn it again. But actually, I think what's happening is that it's more like a spiral, that we come back around to a lesson and we are on this upward spiral, so that although we're coming back round to the same type of thing again, we're at a higher level than we were before, a deeper place of understanding. Welcome to the High Sensory Mothers podcast, a space for intuitive mothers who experience the world deeply. You might know this as high sensitivity, being an HSP, or my preferred term, high sensory intelligence. I'm your host, Karen Hunt. Let's dive into today's episode. Hi, and welcome to the High Sensory Mothers podcast. I'm your host, Karen Hunt, and today I want to talk to you about awareness. So we often think that we need to do more, to push harder, to fix more. But what if the moment that we start noticing more is when everything changes? Have you ever had that experience where you are about to do something because somebody has asked you to, and as soon as you've had that request, you feel a shift in your body somehow? And it might be something like your jaw tensing, you might clench, you might feel your breathing suddenly becomes really high and shallow. And then you notice that. And that's the important part. You notice. So often we can go through life and we have these negative reactions to things, but we don't really notice them. We don't notice when they're happening. We might notice when it's too late, when it's had a really detrimental effect on us. And so I believe that self-awareness, when we actually notice these things, is the foundation for change. It's what makes everything flow, and it's what helps us along that journey of personal development and growth. So I believe that awareness that you had, not necessarily the action that followed it, but that awareness is the beginning of the journey that you're going on. The way I see it now is that these moments when we're noticing something within ourselves is when we start traveling up a spiral. Rather than climbing a ladder, which is how I used to view growth and development, was one step and then another, and then sometimes you'd come back down and fall a few steps and then you'd climb back up again. I started noticing this pattern that I would get this feeling of remembrance, this feeling that I've been here before. I've learnt this lesson, I thought, before, but clearly I haven't because I'm having to learn it again. But actually I think what's happening is that it's more like a spiral, that we come back around to a lesson and we are on this upward spiral, so that although we're coming back round to the same type of thing again, we're at a higher level than we were before. So yes, we're having to relearn this lesson, but it's coming from a different place. It's coming from a higher perspective, a deeper place of understanding. And I think that's a really crucial difference to consider, that you're not just coming up and going back down again. you're in a constant upward motion and revisiting things that need to be solidified, they need to be deepened. Think about when you were at school, or perhaps you have children at school, and at primary school you might learn one element of science. Let's say you're learning about the water cycle. You can only learn what you're able to understand at that age. And then as you go through your school career and you reach the level when you're taking exams like GCSEs in this country, maybe you'll be revisiting that lesson about the water cycle. But this time it's building upon the foundations that you already know, and it's deepening that lesson. There's more to it than you realised when you were a younger child. And then perhaps you go to university and you dig deeper into that area of learning. And I see this is what it's like for us in all areas of our life. We have these lessons, and yes, we have to revisit them again and again and again. But as long as we are open and aware and accepting of the fact that we can't possibly know it all, we can deepen these lessons, these understandings. And so it just takes us around and we grow. And I think that's a really beautiful experience that we have, a great journey that we're all on. It's essentially, I think, with a ladder, it feels rather one-dimensional because, you know, it's more transactional in that you take this one step and you get there, and then you come back down and you're going down there. Whereas with the spiral, it's this feeling of wisdom, I think, that you get. It's not just about one particular step going forwards and going backwards. It's really appreciating that you learn more and you experience more, and therefore you develop your wisdom as you go along. So we're not revisiting these lessons that we need to learn because we're failing at life. We're revisiting them to deepen our understanding because we're evolving in life. I think as HSPs, highly sensitive people, or high sensory people as I like to call us, we process so deeply, and because of that we may also find ourselves putting a lot of pressure to do more because we understand so much. We don't have to do something with every insight that we have. We might put in more effort than we have to, or that we need to, or that we should do on things, when actually it's enough just to notice what's happening. And I think awareness is so important, but also not valued so much in our society, where fixing things and doing things seems to be valued more. But I do think that noticing and being aware is a slower, more human approach rather than a fast-paced, almost robotic approach to life. So being aware and noticing, and because we're so good at noticing the subtleties, I think it can be overlooked. When you notice a pattern, that could be enough, just noticing it. Perhaps that will come in later. You don't necessarily have to do something about it right now. You just need to have clarity. You need to see things clearly. And spending that time to be aware, to notice what's around you, to notice what's within you, can be enough. It's the first step in making changes that you want to make. So, for example, perhaps you're at home with your children and you might start noticing that you're feeling frustrated because your tone changes. And because you're good at picking up on subtle cues, You notice a shift in your child, the way they look at you perhaps. And so you notice that change, and you can then choose what to do about that. You can practice compassion with yourself. You can practice forgiveness. You can model that to your child. You can apologize. You can explain to them that you're feeling frustrated because of whatever that reason is, and you're sorry that you've taken it out on them. And you're making so much out of that noticing and that awareness. And so it's a very valuable skill to have, and it's worth cultivating. It's worth just taking that time to notice. It helps you notice how you're feeling, so it can help you implement boundaries. Perhaps you have someone who is asking a lot of you, and when you consider and reflect on this, you realise that actually they're overstepping your boundaries. But perhaps you haven't set those boundaries in place. Perhaps it's only a mental boundary or an expectation. And now you have the opportunity to put those boundaries in place and to say no. Maybe if you hadn't noticed how your body was clenching or how your breath was holding when you perhaps see that person, or you see a message from them and you can feel that bracing, that's a message to you, and then you can do something about that later. Perhaps, we talked about this last time, perhaps you feel guilty for taking time just to sit and rest and relax. Perhaps you feel like you have to earn it, you have to be really tired. It has to be only at a certain time of day where you can take that time. And you notice that guilt when you consider taking rest sooner. Again, this is all a way of you beginning on this journey to come home to yourself, to come back to yourself, and to live your best life for the benefit of you and everyone else around you, your family, your children, the people that you're here to serve. Taking this time to notice, to be self-aware, is serving others. In the long run, it will benefit everybody. And that's what we're always after, isn't it? A win-win situation. And that's what you can generate from this noticing, from this self-awareness. It seems like it's a passive thing to do, to just notice and to be aware. But I think there's a paradox there, because it's the first step in taking aligned action, to notice first. It's a pause that opens that door to the choices that are ahead of you. Do you continue being the same way, or do you make a different choice? How can you make that choice if you aren't aware that it even exists? One of the most powerful things I found in this practice is that it stops me from reacting. Instead, it allows me that opportunity just to take a moment to pause and then respond rather than react. And that's definitely a sign of a more mature person, when you don't have to react to everything and you can respond. And I think it's something that seems to be harder and harder for people to even practice. I think that's mainly due to this deep level of connection we have on social media, because we are being programmed with our technology to make decisions super quickly. When we swipe, when we look at something, we're constantly making judgments, therefore we're constantly making decisions, and it creates fatigue. We aren't built to make so many decisions so quickly in such a short amount of time. And I think the art of just taking a moment to pause and reflect is really important. It's just too easy to react. And I think that's not a helpful thing that we're experiencing in the world today. So I hope that you feel good about taking some time to notice. Notice what's happening within you and around you, and just take a breath. Sometimes that's all you need, just one breath before you respond. I do feel that as HSPs, managing our energy and our nervous systems is so important, especially in the long run. We can get by when we're younger by making, I would say, not the best decisions for ourselves. But the longer we leave it, the harder it becomes and the more damage control we need to do. So this is part of that practice. This is part of looking after your nervous system. It's helping us to choose what we do from a place of presence and not from a place of survival. So I would love to leave a couple of thoughts with you. You may just want to reflect on this or journal on them. What is it that you're becoming aware of lately? What is it that you're becoming aware of lately? And I would particularly encourage you to think about anything that's perhaps making you feel uncomfortable, because that can be a really useful place to start. And then following on from that, what's one thing that you can notice this week without having to try and fix it? I think that's quite an important thing as well. Just notice, but resist that urge to fix it. Noticing is the first step. Later, you can look at what the priorities are that need to get looked at deeper, and then perhaps to fix. So I hope that was helpful today. I just want you to remember that sometimes it's not a breakthrough that you're looking for, it's just a moment to notice what's there. I hope that was useful, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now. Thanks for being here with me today. If something in this episode resonated, trust it. This podcast is part of the High Sensory Mothers body of work for sensitive women who've carried too much and are ready to come home to themselves and what truly matters. You can find out more at highsensorymothers.com. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.